the ultimate science-backed guide to cleaning your mental house. Before we start, here's what you're about to learn, and why your brain has been begging you to learn it. Why your mind feels cluttered even when your life looks fine on paper. The specific brain mechanism that turns an unfinished task into a 3 a.m. thought loop. Why sleep isn't just rest. It's your brain's literal janitorial shift. A 5-minute writing protocol shown to reduce intrusive thoughts for weeks afterward. Why trying to just stop thinking about it is neurologically the worst strategy you could pick. And the one daily window, just 20 minutes, that can shut down chronic rumination. If you've ever lain awake replaying a conversation from 6 years ago, opened 15 browser tabs and couldn't finish a single thought, or felt tired despite doing nothing physically demanding all day, this video is your operating manual. Not metaphorically, mechanistically. Let's get into it. We talk about mental clutter like it's a metaphor. It isn't. It's a measurable cognitive state, and it has a real cost. Here's the frame I want you to hold for the rest of this video. Your brain has a finite pool of what cognitive scientists call working memory, the mental workspace you use to hold and manipulate information in real time. Most estimates put its capacity at somewhere between 3 and 7 discrete items at once. That's it. That's the whole desk you're working with. Every open task, every unresolved conversation, every "I should really deal with that," those don't just disappear when you stop consciously thinking about them. They get parked, and parked items still take up space on the desk, even when you're not looking at them. This is why you can feel exhausted after a day where you didn't do anything physically taxing. You weren't tired from doing, you were tired from holding. So, cleaning your mental house isn't a wellness slogan. It's a literal description of reducing the number of unresolved items your brain is forced to hold open at once. And, just as important, giving your brain the conditions it needs to actually process and file away the things it's already holding. That's the frame. Your mind isn't broken, it's overloaded, and overload has an off-ramp. Let's talk about why the overload happens in the first place. Why unfinished tasks won't leave you alone. There's a well-documented effect in psychology called the Zeigarnik effect, named after the Soviet psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, who noticed something odd back in the 1920s. Waiters could remember complex, unpaid orders in vivid detail, but the moment the bill was settled, the memory evaporated almost instantly. The finding, replicated many times since, is this. Unfinished tasks occupy far more mental real estate than finished ones. Your brain treats an open loop as a standing instruction to keep monitoring it. Not because you're anxious or undisciplined, because that's what working memory is for. It's a monitoring system, and monitoring systems don't like open questions. This is why a half-written email nags at you more than a sent one. It's not the content, it's the incompleteness. Now stack multiple open loops on top of each other, and you get a second effect. Attention residue. Organizational psychologist Sophie Leroy, in research on task switching, found that when people move from task A to task B without finishing task A, part of their attention stays behind, attached to the unfinished task. Performance on task B measurably suffers, even though the person believes they've moved on. This is the neuroscience behind why answering a work message during dinner ruins the rest of your evening even after you put the phone down. Your attention didn't come back to the table with you. Some of it is still sitting in your inbox. Multiply this across a modern day. Email, texts, unresolved conversations, half-read articles, unmade decisions, and you get a brain running dozens of low-grade background processes simultaneously. That's mental clutter, mechanistically defined. Why just don't think about it, Backfires? Here's where most advice gets it exactly backward. The instinct is to suppress the unwanted thought, force it out. Psychologist Daniel Wegner's classic thought suppression research, often summarized as the white bear studies, demonstrated the opposite effect. Actively trying not to think about something increases its frequency once you stop suppressing, and often even while you're mid-suppression. The brain runs a background check. Am I still not thinking about the white bear? Which requires holding the white bear in mind to verify its absence. Suppression doesn't close the loop. It just adds a second loop on top of the first, the original thought, plus the effort of monitoring whether you're still having it. This matters enormously for rumination. Psychologist Ethan Kross, who has spent much of his career studying the inner voice, describes rumination as attention getting hijacked by a negative loop that replays without resolving anything, distinct from productive reflection, which actually moves you toward a solution. His research points to specific techniques, which we'll get to in the protocol section, that create psychological distance from a thought without suppressing it. Sleep, the brain's actual janitorial shift. This next part is not a metaphor either. During deep, slow-wave sleep, the brain undergoes measurable physical changes in how it clears waste. Research led by neuroscientist Mike Nectar identified what's now called the glymphatic system, a network that flushes metabolic byproducts out of brain tissue, and which becomes dramatically more active during sleep, when brain cells shrink slightly and allow more fluid to flow between them. Separately, sleep scientist Matthew Walker's work has shown that REM sleep in particular plays a role in emotional memory processing, essentially stripping the sharp emotional charge off a memory while preserving the informational content. This is part of why a problem that feels catastrophic at midnight often feels merely difficult by 7 a.m. Nothing about the problem changed. Your brain filed it differently overnight. Skip or fragment that sleep, and both processes, physical waste clearance and emotional diffusing, get cut short. The clutter doesn't get processed. It just gets carried into the next day, on top of whatever new clutter that day generates. Putting the mechanism together. So, here's the full picture. In one line, open loops consume working memory. Switching between them leaves attention residue behind, suppressing them backfires, and sleep is the primary window your brain has to actually close them out. That means an effective mental decluttering system has to do three things. Close as many loops as possible through externalization, getting them out of your head and onto something else. Give the loops you can't close yet a designated place to be monitored so your brain stops randomly checking on them. Protect the conditions, especially sleep, that allow your brain to actually finish processing what's left. Now let's turn that into a protocol. 6 tools. Each one targets a specific mechanism we just covered. Use what applies to you. You don't need all 6 on the same day. Tool 1. The Brain Dump Reset. Benefit: closes open loops in working memory in under 5 minutes. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Write down every unfinished task, unresolved thought, and nagging "I should" currently in your head. No editing, no organizing, no complete sentences required. This works directly against the Zeigarnik effect. You're not finishing the tasks, you're externalizing them, moving them from unreliable internal monitoring to a stable external record. Research on this kind of cognitive offloading shows that simply writing a plan for an unfinished task, not completing it, just planning it, reduces the intrusive pull of that task almost as much as finishing it would. Do this first thing in the morning or last thing before bed. Morning clears the desk before the day loads it up. Night clears it before sleep has to do its own processing work on top of an already full queue. Tool 2. The 20-minute worry window. Benefit: contains rumination to a scheduled window instead of letting it run all day. Pick a consistent 20-minute window, same time daily, away from bed. During that window, and only that window, you're allowed to worry, ruminate, spiral, whatever you need to do. Outside the window, when a worry shows up, you don't suppress it. You note it in one line and tell yourself, specifically, "I'll think about this at 5 p.m. This is a technique from stimulus control approaches used in cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety and insomnia. And it does 2 things. It avoids the suppression backfire we covered earlier, because you're not fighting the thought, you're rescheduling it. And over time it trains your brain that unresolved loops have a reliable place to be addressed, which reduces how urgently they demand attention in the meantime. Tool 3. The reappraisal rewrite. Benefit: lowers the emotional charge of a stuck thought without avoiding it. For one specific recurring worry, write it twice, once exactly as it shows up in your head, and once reframed from a more distanced, third-person, "what would I tell a friend" perspective. This is built on cognitive reappraisal research from psychologist James Gross and colleagues, which has repeatedly shown that changing the interpretation of an emotional situation, not denying it, reinterpreting it, reduces measurable emotional intensity, including physiological stress markers. The mechanism isn't positive thinking. It's changing your vantage point on the thought, which is a different cognitive operation than suppressing it, and one that doesn't backfire the way suppression does. Tool 4. The Expressive Writing Protocol. Benefit: processes emotionally loaded events with effects shown to last for weeks. This one has some of the strongest data behind it in this whole video. Psychologist James Pennebaker's expressive writing studies had participants write about a difficult or traumatic experience for 15 to 20 minutes a day, several days in a row, focusing on both the facts and the emotions involved. The consistent finding across decades of follow-up research: participants showed improved mood, fewer intrusive thoughts, and in some studies even measurable changes in immune function and reduced doctor visits in the following months, compared to writing about a neutral topic. The mechanism appears to be narrative construction, turning a chaotic, fragmented emotional memory into a coherent story, with a beginning, middle, and end, gives the brain a completed structure to file away, instead of an open loop to keep monitoring. Do this for 4 consecutive days, 15 minutes each, on one specific unresolved experience. Don't reread what you wrote between sessions. The processing happens in the writing, not the rereading. Tool 5. Single-tasking sweeps. Benefit: prevents new attention residue from accumulating throughout the day. Block 25 to 45 minutes at a time for one task only. Phone in another room, one browser tab. When the block ends, take a 2-minute break where you explicitly note out loud or in writing, "The task is paused, I'll return at time." Alex softly says, "That task is paused, I'll return at 5:30. That closing statement matters. Sophie Leroy's attention residue research found that people who made a specific plan for resuming an interrupted task carried over less attention residue than people who simply stopped. The plan tells your monitoring system the loop has a designated re-entry point, so it can stop checking in the meantime. Tool 6. Protect the cleanup shift. Benefit: gives your brain the physical window it needs to finish what the other 5 tools started. None of the above matters much if the nightly processing shift gets cut short. The practical version of this: consistent sleep and wake times, and a buffer of 30 to 60 minutes before bed without high stimulation input. Because the emotional memory processing we covered in the mechanism section is concentrated in specific sleep stages that get disrupted disproportionately by late sleep onset and fragmented sleep. Think of the first 5 tools as taking the trash out to the curb. This last one is making sure the truck actually comes. A few important caveats, because oversimplifying this would do you a disservice. First, none of this replaces treatment for clinical anxiety, depression, or trauma. Rumination that's severe, persistent, or tied to a traumatic event benefits enormously from working with a licensed therapist. These tools are maintenance practices, not a substitute for clinical care when clinical care is warranted. Second, expressive writing about trauma can, for a minority of people, cause temporary distress spikes before the benefit shows up. If a memory feels too large to write about alone, that's a signal to process it with a professional first, not a sign the technique failed. Third, more isn't better here. Doing a 45-minute brain dump, then a worry window, then expressive writing, all in one day, tends to backfire. You can re-trigger loops you'd already closed. These tools work best spaced out, a couple at a time, not stacked into a single mental health marathon. And last, consistency matters more than intensity. A 5-minute brain dump done daily will outperform an occasional 2-hour reset every time. Because the whole system depends on your brain learning that open loops reliably get addressed. And that's a pattern built through repetition, not through one big effort. Recap. So here's what I'd actually do with this. Starting tonight, pick one tool, just one. My suggestion: start with the brain dump reset, because it's the fastest on-ramp, and it makes every other tool easier once your working memory isn't already full. 5 minutes tonight, before bed. Everything in your head, onto paper. Not organized, not solved, just out. Do that for a week before adding anything else. Your brain didn't get cluttered in a day, and it's not going to get clean in one either. But the mechanism is real, the research behind it is solid, and the effect compounds faster than most people expect. If this was useful, the next video in this series goes deeper on the sleep and memory consolidation piece specifically. How much of last night's sleep architecture is actually dedicated to processing yesterday's unresolved thoughts, and what disrupts that process most. Until then, go clean out that inbox in your head. It's been waiting. Here are 3 FAQs. 1. What does cleaning your mental house actually mean? It means reducing the number of unfinished tasks and unresolved thoughts your brain is forced to hold in working memory at once. Psychologists call this effect the Zeigarnik effect. Unfinished tasks stay mentally loud until they're either completed or deliberately externalized, such as by writing them down. 2. Why do I feel mentally exhausted, even when I haven't done anything physically demanding? Mental exhaustion often comes from holding multiple unresolved tasks in working memory, not from physical exertion. Research on attention residue shows that switching between unfinished tasks leaves part of your attention attached to each one, draining cognitive energy throughout the day, even when you feel physically idle. 3. Does trying to stop thinking about something make it worse? Yes. Actively suppressing a thought typically increases how often it returns, a pattern documented in Daniel Wegner's thought suppression research. A more effective approach is scheduling a fixed daily worry window or writing the thought down, which gives your brain a designated place to process it instead of fighting it. Like and subscribe. Health is wealth. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.